No. If you fix my car, I will marry you.
If you can make my car to work, I'll marry you, says the billionaire CEO. What happened next shocked the world. The billionaire CEO's shocking promise sparked a chain of events no one saw coming. And no one expected the mechanic's next move. Before we go into details, please subscribe, it's free, and it makes my day 100% better. Like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're watching from on comment section. I pray may the good God Almighty bless and preserve you all and your family. Amen. Let's begin. They said it couldn't be fixed. 17 mechanics. 15 years. One impossible engine. But when billionaire CEO Clarissa Thornwood looked into the eyes of struggling mechanic Maxwell Bliss and said, "Fix my car and I'll marry you," neither of them realized they were about to repair something far more broken than any machine, each other's shattered hearts. This is the story of an engine that refused to start, a promise that changed two lives, and the day a mechanic's wrench became mightier than a billionaire's empire. Maxwell Bliss wiped the sweat from his forehead with a grease-stained rag, leaving another dark smear across his temple. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the cracked concrete of Bliss Auto Repair, and the ancient oscillating fan in the corner did nothing but push hot air from one side of the garage to the other. "Daddy, are we going to lose the shop?" Emma's small voice cut through the mechanical symphony of rattling tools and distant traffic. She sat on an upturned crate near the office door, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that reminded Maxwell so painfully of her mother. In her lap, she clutched a worn stuffed elephant named Mr. Trunk, its once grey fabric faded to a dusty silver. Maxwell straightened up from beneath the hood of a 2010 Honda Civic, his back protesting with a familiar ache. At 34, he already felt 50. The divorce had aged him. The struggle had weathered him. The responsibility of being everything to his daughter, while watching his father's legacy crumble around him, had nearly broken him. "No, sweetheart," he lied, forcing a smile that didn't reach his tired blue eyes. "We are going to be just fine." But the stack of red-stamped envelopes on his desk told a different story. Past due. Final notice. Imminent foreclosure. The bank had given him until the end of the month, just 3 weeks away, to come up with $47,000, or Bliss Auto Repair, the shop his grandfather had opened in 1962, would be gone forever. "Mrs. Patterson from next door brought cookies," Emma said, climbing down from her crate with the careful movement of a child who'd spent too many afternoons in adult spaces, learning to navigate sharp edges and heavy equipment. "She said we should come over for dinner. She made meatloaf." Charity. Another wound to Maxwell's pride. But he couldn't let Emma see it hurt. "That's kind of her," he managed, turning back to the Civic. The radiator needed replacing, but the customer had balked at the $600 estimate. He'd agreed to patch it for $150, a temporary fix that Maxwell knew wouldn't last through winter. But temporary was all anyone could afford these days, including him. The sound of an engine, a deep, throaty purr of expensive engineering, made Maxwell pause. In this neighborhood, luxury vehicles were as rare as winning lottery tickets. He glanced toward the street just as a gleaming black Mercedes Maybach S-Class pulled into his parking lot, looking as out of place as a diamond in a toolbox. Emma jumped up, her eyes wide. "Daddy, look at that car." Maxwell's first instinct was to assume the driver was lost, looking for directions to the affluent neighborhoods 5 miles north. But when the driver's door opened, he forgot about the Maybach entirely. She emerged like she was stepping onto a red carpet instead of oil-stained concrete. Blonde hair caught the afternoon light, styled in waves that suggested a salon appointment cost more than Maxwell's monthly mortgage payment. The electric blue blazer fit her like it had been sculpted to her body, paired with a black leather miniskirt and heels that clicked with authority as she approached. But it was her face that made Maxwell's breath catch, not because she was beautiful, though she was strikingly so, but because of the expression she wore. It was a mask of controlled fury, the kind that came from too many disappointments and not enough time to process them. "Are you the owner?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Maxwell glanced down at his grease-stained coveralls, the name Bliss embroidered over his heart pocket. "That's what the shirt says." "Don't be cute." "I don't have time for cute." She stopped 5 feet away, as if getting closer might contaminate her designer clothes with poverty. I need a mechanic. A real one. The emphasis on real stung more than Maxwell wanted to admit. He set down his wrench deliberately, straightening to his full height of 6'1". Then you definitely came to the wrong neighborhood, Princess. The Mercedes dealership is. I didn't come here for a Mercedes, she interrupted, pulling out her phone with a sharp gesture. I came here because you're the last name on a very long list, and I'm desperate enough to scrape the bottom of the barrel. Emma gasped softly at the rudeness, and something in Maxwell snapped. He'd endured a lot of humiliation lately, the pity from neighbors, the condescension from the bank manager, the looks from other parents at Emma's school who knew his wife had left him for a man who could actually provide stability. But he wouldn't let some entitled billionaire treat him like garbage in front of his daughter. Well, the barrel's closed for business, especially to people who confuse desperation with basic human decency. He turned back to the Civic. The 405 freeway will take you back to whatever golden tower you came from. There was a long silence. Maxwell could feel her stare burning into his back. Emma clutched Mr. Trunk tighter, her eyes darting between her father and the strange, angry woman. $2 million. Maxwell froze, his hand halfway to the radiator cap. That's what I'll pay you if you can fix one car. One vintage Bentley that's been sitting in my garage for 15 years. Her voice had changed, lost some of its cutting edge. Now it carried something else, genuine desperation. 17 mechanics have tried. Master technicians from Bentley themselves. Classic car specialists from England. One man who claimed to have worked on the Queen's personal vehicles. Slowly, Maxwell turned around. And they all failed. Every single one. She lowered her phone, and for the first time, he saw past the armor of her expensive clothes and harsh attitude. Her eyes were grey-blue, rimmed with exhaustion that makeup couldn't quite conceal. The car belonged to my father. It's a 1965 Bentley S3 Continental, one of only 77 ever made. He died 3 years ago, and his will stipulates that I can only access the final portion of my inheritance and complete a merger that will save my company if I can prove the car is operational. That's an unusual condition for a will, Maxwell said carefully. Her laugh was bitter. My father was an unusual man. Brilliant, but obsessed with teaching lessons from beyond the grave. He knew I'd sell the car the moment he died. It was always his treasure, never mine. So he made damn sure I'd have to preserve it. She paused, her jaw tightening. He also knew that I'd need that inheritance. Without it, I can't finalize the merger with Ashford Technologies. Without the merger, Thornwood Industries will be carved up by our competitors within 6 months. 3,000 employees will lose their jobs, including a lot of people who've worked for my family for decades. Maxwell studied her more carefully now. Her desperation was real, and beneath the designer armor, he recognized something he saw in his own mirror every morning. Someone fighting to save something bigger than themselves. What makes you think I can fix what master Bentley technicians couldn't? He asked quietly. She pulled up something on her phone, then turned it to show him a screen filled with text. It was a forum post from ClassicCarsRestoration.com, dated 3 years ago. Thought this one was beyond saving. 67 Aston Martin DB6 that had been submerged in a barn flood for 2 years. Wiring completely corroded, engine block cracked, transmission seized. Brought it to Maxwell Bliss at Bliss Auto Repair in Metro City. 15 other shops told me to scrap it. Maxwell had it running in 8 weeks. It's witchcraft, I swear. This man can resurrect the dead. The post had 247 comments, most of them calling it fake or impossible. Maxwell remembered that Aston Martin. He'd barely slept for 2 months working on it, and it had nearly bankrupted him because the owner had skipped town before paying the full bill. That was a long time ago, Maxwell said softly. I'm not that mechanic anymore. Then pretend to be him for one car. $2 million, Mr. Bliss. She stepped closer, and he caught a scent of expensive perfume mixed with desperation. I know you're facing foreclosure. I know your ex-wife is suing for full custody of your daughter, claiming you can't provide a stable environment. I know. How the hell do you know that? Anger flared hot in his chest. Because I had you investigated before I drove across town. I'm not in the habit of trusting strangers with my future. She glanced at Emma, who was watching with wide eyes, then back to Maxwell. $2 million would solve every problem you have. You could save this shop. Fight for your daughter. Start over. It was everything Maxwell wanted, wrapped in an offer too good to be true, which meant it probably was. And if I can't fix it? He asked. She shrugged, the gesture at odds with the tension in her shoulders. Then you're no worse off than you are now. I'll pay you $20,000 just for attempting it. At least then I can tell the probate court that I exhausted every possible option. $22,000. It was enough to buy him another 3 months, maybe 4. Enough to keep Emma in her school, in their house. Enough to breathe. But something in this woman's story didn't add up. 15 years was a long time for a car to sit dormant. And if 17 specialists had failed, what's the real challenge? Maxwell asked, what's actually wrong with the car? For the first time, something resembling respect flickered across her features. You're smarter than you look. I'm smarter than most people assume when they see grease under my fingernails. She pulled up another image on her phone, this one a photograph of a stunning white Bentley with gleaming chrome and elegant curves. It sat in what looked like a climate-controlled garage, pristine except for one visible detail. The engine compartment was open, revealing an empty cavity where the engine should be. My father removed the engine 2 months before he died. He claimed he was sending it to England for a complete restoration, but there's no record of it ever being shipped. No paper trail.
No documentation.
Nothing. Her voice dropped. The engine vanished, Mr. Bliss. And without it, the car will never run. The will specifies that I must start the car using its original engine. No replacements allowed. Maxwell felt the familiar pull of a puzzle that didn't want to be solved. It was what had made him good at his work, before life had beaten the curiosity out of him. Your father hid the engine somewhere, he said slowly. This is a treasure hunt. More like a torture device. She pocketed her phone. But yes, the probate attorney believes my father left clues. He was obsessed with vintage mysteries, old codes, stupid games. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. Even in death, he couldn't just love me. He had to test me. Emma had crept closer during the conversation, her curiosity overcoming her shyness. Is the car pretty? She asked in a small voice. The woman's hard expression softened immediately when she looked down at the little girl. It was like watching ice crack. It's the most beautiful car in the world, she said, and for the first time, her voice carried genuine warmth. It's the color of clouds, with leather seats the color of caramel. My father used to let me sit in it when I was about your age, and he'd tell me stories about all the places we'd drive together someday. Did you go? Emma asked.
No.
The word was soft and full of old pain. We never did. Maxwell watched the exchange, seeing his daughter's natural empathy working its magic. Emma had a gift for finding the hurt in people and trying to heal it, even when they didn't know they were wounded. I'll look at the car, Maxwell heard himself say, the words escaping before his brain could catch up.
No promises.
But I'll examine it, see if I can find any clues your father might have left. If I think I can solve this, we'll talk terms. If not, you don't owe me anything. She turned those sharp grey-blue eyes on him, searching his face for deception. Why would you do that? Because your story just broke my daughter's heart, Maxwell thought. Because I've spent 3 years unable to fix my own life, and maybe I need to remember what it feels like to fix something that matters. Because despite your terrible attitude, I recognize someone who's fighting to save something bigger than themselves. Because I'm a mechanic, he said simply. And sometimes you have to look under the hood before you know if you can help. She studied him for a long moment, then extended her hand. Clarissa Thornwood. People call me Rissa, though only friends get to use it, and I don't have many of those. He shook her hand, soft skin, firm grip, the handshake of someone who'd fought for every ounce of respect she'd ever received. Maxwell Bliss. People call me Max, though only people who aren't scraping barrels get to use it. The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. Touché, Mr. Bliss. It's maximum. And this is Emma. Emma gave a small wave, still clutching Mr. Trunk. "Hi, Miss Rissa. I hope my daddy can fix your car. He's really good at fixing things. He fixed my music box when Mommy broke it." The air suddenly felt heavier. Maxwell saw Clarissa register the information: the absent mother, the broken music box, the little girl trying so hard to believe her father could fix anything. "I hope so too," Clarissa said softly, crouching down to Emma's level despite her expensive skirt and heels. "Because if he can, I promise I'll take you for a ride in it. You can sit right where I used to sit when I was your age." Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? Really?" Clarissa stood, her armor sliding back into place as she faced Maxwell. "My estate is in Hawthorne Heights. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I'll have the gate security expecting you." She pulled a business card from her blazer pocket and handed it to him. "Don't be late, Mr. Bliss. I may be desperate, but I still value punctuality." "Wouldn't dream of it, Miss Thornwood." She walked back to her Maybach with that same confident stride, but Maxwell noticed something he hadn't before. She was favoring her left leg slightly, like she was fighting pain with every step. The driver's door closed, the engine purred to life, and she was gone. Emma tugged on his coverall. "Daddy, are you really going to help her?" Maxwell looked down at the business card in his hand. Embossed silver lettering on black cardstock: Clarissa Thornwood, CEO, Thornwood Industries. Below that, a phone number and an address that confirmed she lived in a zip code where the houses had names instead of numbers. "Yeah, sweetheart. I think I am." "Why?" "She was kind of mean." Maxwell knelt down to his daughter's level, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "You know what Grandpa George used to tell me? He said the cars that come in here looking the worst, making the most noise, acting the most difficult, those are usually the ones that just need someone to figure out what's really wrong. Miss Rissa reminded me of that." Emma considered this seriously. "You think she's broken like a car?" "I think she's hurting," Maxwell said carefully. "And sometimes when people hurt enough, they forget how to be kind. But that doesn't mean they don't deserve help." "Okay." Emma brightened. "Can we have Mrs. Patterson's meatloaf now? I'm really hungry." As they locked up the shop and walked next door, Maxwell found himself thinking about vintage Bentleys, missing engines, and billionaires who'd rather bark orders than ask for help. He thought about his father's stories of impossible repairs, the challenges that had built this shop's reputation before time and circumstance had worn it down. Most of all, he thought about Clarissa Thornwood's eyes in that moment when she'd looked at Emma and talked about her father's car. How the hardness had cracked just enough to show the wounded girl still living inside the corporate armor. He had no idea if he could find a missing engine or solve a dead man's puzzle. But for the first time in 3 years, Maxwell Bliss felt something he'd almost forgotten: the electric anticipation of a challenge that mattered. Tomorrow, he'd walk into a world that existed light years away from his struggling garage. Tomorrow, he'd face an impossible mechanical mystery, but tonight, he'd have meatloaf with his daughter and pretend that the future wasn't balanced on the edge of a wrench. The address led Maxwell through neighborhoods that gradually transformed from worn to comfortable to affluent to impossibly wealthy. By the time he pulled his battered 2008 Ford F-150 up to the gates of the Thornwood estate, he felt like he'd driven into a different country entirely. The gate itself was a work of art, wrought iron twisted into intricate patterns that suggested family crests and old money. Through the bars, he could see a driveway of cream-colored stone that curved up a gentle hill, disappearing into an arrangement of perfectly manicured hedges and ancient oak trees. A security guard emerged from a small gatehouse, his uniform more formal than most police officers' dress blues. He approached Maxwell's truck with the kind of polite suspicion reserved for people who clearly don't belong. "Can I help you, sir?" "Maxwell Bliss. Miss Thornwood is expecting me." The guard checked his tablet, then nodded curtly. "ID, please." Maxwell handed over his driver's license, watching as the man scanned it with a device that probably cost more than Maxwell's truck. A moment later, the massive gate swung open with silent hydraulics. "Follow the main drive to the house. Park in the circular courtyard. Miss Thornwood will meet you there." The drive up to the main house took almost 2 minutes. 2 full minutes of driving through a private property that sprawled across what Maxwell estimated was at least 20 acres. He passed a tennis court, a pool house that was bigger than his actual house, and what looked like a guest cottage that probably qualified as a mansion in normal neighborhoods. Then the main house came into view, and Maxwell had to fight the urge to stop the truck and stare. It wasn't a house. It was an architectural statement. Modern lines mixed with classic elegance, glass and steel meeting stone and timber in a way that suggested serious money and even more serious architects. 3 stories of contemporary luxury, with floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the morning sun like a challenge to the heavens. Maxwell pulled into the circular courtyard, his truck looking like a rusty joke next to the collection of vehicles parked there. 2 more Mercedes, a Porsche 911, what looked like a vintage Jaguar E-Type, and a Tesla Model S. He was climbing out of the truck when the massive front door opened and Clarissa appeared. Today she'd traded the electric blue blazer for a white silk blouse and tailored black pants that probably cost more than Maxwell's monthly mortgage. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup that somehow made her look even more intimidating. "You are 3 minutes early," she said by way of greeting. "I appreciate punctuality." "Military father," Maxwell said automatically, then mentally kicked himself. Why was he explaining anything to her? But something shifted in her expression. Recognition, maybe. Mine too. Navy. Commander Thornwood considered anything less than 5 minutes early to be late. It was the first personal detail she'd offered voluntarily, and Maxwell tucked it away. Military father, pressure to perform, impossible standards to meet even from beyond the grave. The puzzle of Clarissa Thornwood was starting to take shape. "The garage is this way." She led him around the side of the house, her heels clicking against stone pavers. "I should warn you, my head of security, Marcus, will be present during your examination. He's protective. Of you or the car. Both." They passed through an archway covered in climbing roses, actual roses, the expensive kind that required professional gardeners, and emerged into a courtyard that housed a structure Maxwell initially thought was another guest house. Then he saw the bay doors and realized it was a garage that could comfortably hold 8 vehicles. Clarissa produced a keycard and swiped it across a reader. One of the bay doors rolled up with a whisper-quiet motor, revealing an interior that made Maxwell's breath catch. It was a car collector's fantasy. Climate-controlled, with polished concrete floors and professional-grade lighting. Vintage automobiles sat in various states of perfection, a forest green Austin Healey 3000, a red Ferrari 250 GT that was probably worth 7 figures, a silver Porsche 356 Speedster, and others Maxwell couldn't immediately identify. But in the center of the space, under a spotlight that made it glow like a religious icon, sat the Bentley. Maxwell had seen pictures, but they hadn't done it justice. The 1965 Bentley S3 Continental was automotive poetry. Long, elegant lines painted in pearl white that caught the light like snow. Chrome accents gleamed as if they'd been polished yesterday. The leather interior visible through the windows showed the rich caramel color Clarissa had described. Aged to perfection rather than decay, It was the most beautiful car Maxwell had ever seen, and it was heartbreakingly incomplete. The hood was open, revealing the empty cavity where 6 cylinders of British engineering excellence should have been. "Maxwell Bliss, meet Marcus Shaw." Clarissa's voice pulled him from his automotive trance. A man emerged from the shadows near the Ferrari. 6'3", 240 pounds of muscle, with the kind of posture and alert eyes that screamed military background. Late 40s, Maxwell guessed, with grey threading through dark haircut in a style that was regulation even if he wasn't in uniform anymore. "Mr. Bliss." Marcus didn't offer to shake hands, just gave a nod that managed to be both respectful and threatening. "I'll be observing your work. Nothing personal. But this car is worth $2.3 million in its current incomplete state. With the original engine, it could fetch $8 million at auction from the right collector." "I'm not here to steal anything," Maxwell said evenly. That's what the last 3 mechanics said. One tried to smuggle out an original toolkit worth $45,000. Another attempted to replace a gauge with a reproduction and keep the original. The third had a camera hidden in his watch, taking detailed photos to sell to competing collectors. Maxwell whistled low. "People are garbage." "Most people," Marcus agreed. We'll see about you. Clarissa moved to stand beside the Bentley, running her hand along the hood with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with her usual sharp demeanor. My father bought this car in 1987, the year I was born. He claimed it was his celebration of my birth, though I suspect he'd been planning the purchase for years. He drove it exactly once a month, the first Sunday of every month, never more than 50 miles, always the same route through the countryside. Ritual, Maxwell murmured, already circling the car slowly, taking in every detail. Obsession, Clarissa corrected. He loved this car more than... She stopped abruptly, then continued in a different tone. He loved this car very much. Maxwell heard what she didn't say, more than he loved me. The pain was there in the gap between her words. Tell me about the last time it ran, Maxwell said, crouching to examine the undercarriage. February 12th, 15 years ago. He drove it to Sunday brunch at the country club, as usual. When he got home, he backed it into this garage, turned off the engine, and said. She paused, her voice catching. He said, "That's the last time, Rissa. The next person to drive this beauty will have to earn it." You were there. I was 16, home from boarding school for winter break. I thought he was being dramatic. He was always dramatic about this car. But 2 weeks later, he had it up on a lift and spent 3 days carefully removing the engine. He documented every step with photographs, created an inventory of every bolt and washer, then had the engine crated and... She gestured helplessly. Gone. He told me he was sending it to the Bentley Heritage Division in Crewe, England, for a complete restoration. But when I contacted them after he died, they had no record of receiving it. Maxwell stood, brushing off his jeans. He'd worn his best pair, which meant they had only one oil stain instead of several, along with a clean work shirt. Emma had insisted he looked professional before he left. Did he keep the photographs? The inventory. In his study. I'll show you after you examine the car. Clarissa checked her watch, a slim Rolex that probably cost more than Maxwell's truck and shop combined. I have a conference call in 30 minutes. Marcus will stay with you. Before you go, Maxwell said quickly, I need to ask some questions. About your father, about the car, about the circumstances. If I'm going to find that engine, I need to understand his mindset. She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. What kind of questions? Did he have any hobbies besides cars? Places he liked to go? People he trusted? Did he suffer from dementia or any cognitive decline before he died? No dementia. He was sharp as a blade until the heart attack. She crossed her arms, a defensive posture. Hobbies included woodworking, cryptography. He was obsessed with World War II codes and ciphers, and restoring antique clocks. He had a workshop in the basement where he spent most of his free time. Cryptography, Maxwell repeated, feeling a piece of the puzzle click. He liked puzzles. Loved them. Our house was full of puzzle boxes, hidden compartments, secret passages. He designed this estate himself and built in dozens of concealed spaces. A bitter smile touched her lips. He thought it was charming. I thought it was exhausting. You never knew what was real and what was just another test. Did he leave any notes? A letter? Anything when he died? Just the will, with its impossible condition. And... She paused, seeming to debate whether to share. A few weeks before he died, he gave me a compass. An antique brass compass in a wooden case. He said, when you're lost, this will point you home. I thought he was being sentimental. Now I think it might be a clue. Can I see it? It's in my office. After the conference call, I'll bring it down. She moved toward the door, then stopped. Mr. Bliss? I meant what I said yesterday. If you can solve this, I'll pay you $2 million. But more than that, you'd be saving 3,000 jobs and a company my great-grandfather built from nothing. The merger with Ashford Technologies falls apart in 63 days if I can't prove I have access to the inheritance. Without that capital, we lose everything. No pressure then, Maxwell said dryly. She almost smiled. None whatsoever. I'll be back in an hour. After she left, the garage fell silent except for the distant hum of climate control. Marcus leaned against the Ferrari, arms crossed, watching Maxwell with the intensity of a hawk watching a mouse. How long were you military? Maxwell asked, pulling a notebook and pencil from his bag. Marine Corps, 22 years. You? Army, 8 years. Mechanic Corps, got out when Emma was born, wanted to be present in a way my father never was. Maxwell circled the Bentley again, this time taking notes. You served with Commander Thornwood. Knew him professionally. He was Navy, different branch, but we ran in similar circles after retirement. He was... Marcus paused, choosing words carefully. Complicated. Brilliant but hard. Expected excellence from everyone, especially his daughter. Did he love her? The question hung in the air. Marcus studied Maxwell with new interest. That's a strange question from a mechanic. This isn't a mechanical problem. It's a human one. Maxwell knelt by the engine bay, examining the mounting points where the engine had been removed. Every bolt had been carefully replaced, the engine bay cleaned to showroom condition. A father who removes an engine, hides it, and makes his daughter's inheritance dependent on finding it. That's not about cars. That's about something else. What do you think it's about? Control. Testing. Maybe even love, in a twisted way. Making sure she develops skills he valued, persistence, problem-solving, refusing to quit. Maxwell ran his fingers along the frame rails, feeling for anything unusual. Or maybe he wanted to force her to ask for help. She strikes me as someone who'd rather die than admit she needs people. Marcus's expression shifted, surprise, then something like respect. You're more observant than you look. People underestimate mechanics. We spend our days figuring out what's wrong based on sounds, smells, behaviors. People aren't that different from machines. They give off signals about what's broken inside them. So what's broken inside Clarissa? Maxwell straightened up, meeting Marcus's eyes directly. That's none of my business. Fixing her car is my job. Fixing her heart is hers. But you noticed she has one to fix. I noticed she's in pain. Anyone with eyes would notice that. Maxwell pulled out his phone and started photographing the engine bay from every angle. The question is whether she'll let herself heal, or whether she'll keep building armor until she can't feel anything anymore. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. You're not what I expected. Nobody ever is. That's what makes life interesting. Maxwell moved to examine the interior of the Bentley, carefully opening the driver's door. Tell me about the day Commander Thornwood removed the engine. Were you here? No, but the security logs show he spent 14 hours in this garage, with 3 breaks. He didn't allow anyone to help him. The next day, a specialty transportation company arrived, Prestige Auto Shipping, and loaded a large crate onto their truck. But when I contacted them after his death, they claimed they delivered it to Bentley Motors in Crewe. And Bentley says they never received it. Correct. So either someone's lying, or the engine never made it to its destination. Marcus pushed off from the Ferrari, moving closer. I've spent 3 years trying to trace it. The shipping company dissolved 2 years ago, bankruptcy. The driver died in a car accident 18 months ago. Every lead goes cold. Convenient, Maxwell murmured, running his hands over the leather seats. They were in remarkable condition, the caramel color rich and supple. Too convenient. I agree, which is why I think the engine never left this property. Maxwell's head snapped up. You think he hid it here? 20 acres. Multiple buildings. A man who loved hidden compartments and secret spaces. Yes, I think he hid it here. But I've searched every inch of this estate for 3 years and found nothing. Frustration bled through Marcus's professional calm. I've used ground-penetrating radar, metal detectors, thermal imaging. I've examined every building, every structure, every possible hiding place. If it's here, it's hidden better than anything I encountered in 22 years of military service. Maxwell sat in the driver's seat, his hands on the original steering wheel, and tried to think like Commander Thornwood. A man who loved puzzles, cryptography, classic cars. A man who'd built secret passages into his own home. a man who'd given his daughter a compass and said it would point her home. He didn't hide it where you could find it, Maxwell said slowly, the realization unfolding like a blueprint in his mind. He hid it where she could find it. The clues aren't for professionals or treasure hunters. They are for Clarissa. She's been looking too. Has she? Or has she been hiring people to look for her? Maxwell turned to face Marcus. When's the last time she actually searched? Physically got her hands dirty, crawled through spaces, examined things herself. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. She hasn't. She's hired people. Specialists. She's been managing the company, dealing with the merger, running a multi-billion-dollar corporation. She doesn't have time to. That's exactly the problem. Her father knew she'd approach this like a CEO, delegate, hire experts, treat it like a business problem to be solved with money and management. Maxwell climbed out of the car, his mind racing. But he didn't want her to manage this. He wanted her to do it herself, to personally engage with the puzzle he left behind. That's cruel. Maybe. Or maybe he knew that running a corporation was consuming her, and this was the antique compass Clarissa's father gave her wasn't pointing north. It was magnetically altered to point toward a specific location on the estate, a forgotten groundskeeper's cottage where the engine was hidden inside a custom-built climate-controlled vault beneath a false floor. When Maxwell finally located the engine after 3 weeks of searching alongside Clarissa, they discovered her father's final letter sealed inside the engine compartment. It revealed that the marriage clause wasn't about the car. Commander Thornwood had predicted his daughter would fall for whoever had the patience to truly see her. The real inheritance condition was that she marry for love, not convenience, within 5 years of his death. The deadline was in 2 weeks. Marcus discovered that Gregory Ashford, the CEO of Ashford Technologies, had been deliberately stalling the merger. He'd bribed the specialty shipping company to lie about the engine's delivery, hoping Clarissa would fail to meet the inheritance conditions so he could acquire Thornwood Industries for pennies on the dollar through a hostile takeover. Just as Maxwell and Clarissa grew closer, his ex-wife Diane returned with her wealthy fiancé, demanding full custody of Emma and claiming Maxwell's obsession with a billionaire's problems proved his inability to prioritize their daughter. The custody hearing was scheduled for the day before the inheritance deadline. Clarissa revealed why she walked with a slight limp. She had the same congenital heart condition that killed her father and needed surgery within 6 months. She'd been postponing it because she couldn't leave her company vulnerable during the merger crisis. Her father had known about her condition and created the challenge to force her to slow down and find someone trustworthy to share her burdens with before it was too late. The breakthrough came at midnight on a Tuesday, 3 weeks into Maxwell's investigation. Clarissa had finally taken his advice to stop delegating and start searching herself. They were in the estate's old groundskeeper's cottage, a structure so overgrown with ivy that most people forgot it existed. Maxwell held the compass while Clarissa examined the floor, both of them covered in dust and cobwebs. Marcus stood guard at the door, having finally accepted that Maxwell's intentions were genuine. "The needle keeps pointing to this section," Clarissa said, frustration making her voice crack. She'd shed her designer armor over the past weeks, tonight wearing jeans and one of Maxwell's spare work shirts. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she'd never looked more beautiful. "But there's nothing here. Just old floorboards." "Look at the pattern," Maxwell said, kneeling beside her with a flashlight. "These boards run east-west, but these 3 run north-south. Why would someone install them perpendicular to the rest?" Their eyes met, and simultaneously they began prying up the mismatched boards. Beneath them was a steel hatch with a combination lock, the old-fashioned kind with a rotating dial. "The code," Clarissa whispered. "What would he use?" Maxwell remembered the research he'd done on Commander Thornwood. "Your birthday. Try your birthday." Her hand shook as she spun the dial. The 15th of August, 87. The lock clicked open. Inside the vault, wrapped in protective covers and surrounded by climate control equipment still humming after 15 years, sat the Bentley's original engine. It gleamed like new, every component perfectly preserved. But it was the envelope taped to the engine block that made Clarissa's breath catch. Her name written in her father's handwriting, Farissa, who I loved more than she ever knew. She opened it with trembling hands and read aloud. "My dearest Clarissa, if you're reading this, you've done what I knew you could. You persisted, You problem-solved, and most importantly, you allowed someone to help you. You've always been brilliant, my girl, but brilliance without connection is just lonely intelligence. I hid this engine not to torture you, but to slow you down. To make you step away from spreadsheets and boardrooms long enough to remember that life isn't just about building empires. It's about building relationships. The company will survive because you're a Thornwood, and we don't quit. But I didn't want you to survive. I wanted you to live. To love. To let someone see past the armor you've built. Your inheritance isn't the money, Rissa. It never was. Your inheritance is the lesson that some things can't be solved alone, that asking for help isn't weakness, and that the right person will stay through every impossible challenge. The man who helped you find this engine, if he's still beside you after weeks of searching, if he saw past your defenses, if he made you laugh when you wanted to quit, that man is worth more than all the money I'm leaving you. The real condition of my will isn't about the car. It's about you. Marry for love within 5 years of my death, or the inheritance goes to charity. Not because I want to control you, but because I want to ensure you don't marry for business or convenience like I did. I loved your mother, but I married her for the wrong reasons. I don't want that life for you. You have 2 weeks to meet the deadline. The car runs. The merger will proceed. But more importantly, I hope you found someone who sees the woman behind the CEO. All my love, Dad. P.S. The bypass valve on the fuel system is temperamental. Make sure whoever installs the engine knows to prime it twice before starting. That mechanic you found, if he's worth anything, he'll know what I mean. Clarissa's tears fell onto the letter, smearing the ink. Maxwell wrapped his arms around her as she sobbed, not from grief, but from the release of 15 years of believing her father had never truly loved her. He did love you, Maxwell whispered into her hair. He just didn't know how to show it while he was alive. I wasted so much time being angry, she choked out. I could have looked for this years ago, but I was too proud to personally search, too afraid that if I tried and failed, it would prove I wasn't good enough for him. You were always good enough. He knew that. That's why he made the challenge so personal. He knew only you could solve it, but only if you let yourself be vulnerable enough to accept help. Marcus cleared his throat from the doorway. We should get the engine back to the main garage. I'll call a transport crew. No, Clarissa said, pulling back from Maxwell and wiping her eyes. We carry it together. The 3 of us. That's how this works now, together. It took 2 hours to carefully transport the engine to the main garage. By the time they had it positioned on the lift beside the Bentley, the sun was rising over the estate, painting everything in shades of gold. The courtroom was small and cold, with fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly ill. Maxwell sat at the defendant's table in his only suit, a navy blue number he'd bought for his father's funeral 8 years ago. Beside him sat a court-appointed attorney who looked about 12 and had confessed over coffee that morning that he was doing his best. Across the aisle, Diane sat with her fiancé Brad, a real estate developer with perfect hair and a smile that belonged in a toothpaste commercial. Her attorney was a shark in a designer suit who'd already filed 3 motions before the hearing even started. Emma sat in the hallway with Mrs. Patterson, forbidden from the courtroom. Maxwell's heart ached knowing she was out there, scared and confused about why Mommy and Daddy were fighting over her in front of a judge. Mr. Bliss, the judge, a gray-haired woman with sharp eyes, looked over her reading glasses at him. I've reviewed the filings. Your ex-wife claims you've been neglecting your daughter to work on a project for a wealthy client. She claims you've had Emma sleeping in your auto repair shop, that you've missed parent-teacher conferences, and that you've been financially unstable. Maxwell stood, his throat dry. Your Honor, I. Furthermore, the judge continued, she claims you've been exposing Emma to an inappropriate relationship with said wealthy client, and that you've been using your daughter to manipulate sympathy from this client. That's a lie, Maxwell said, his voice stronger now. Yes, I've been working on a challenging project for Miss Thornwood. Yes, Emma has been to the estate, because Miss Thornwood invited her, spent time with her, and treated her with more genuine kindness than her own mother has shown in 3 years. Your Honor, Diane's attorney interjected smoothly, my client has been building a stable life for herself. She's engaged to a successful businessman. They have a 4-bedroom home in an excellent school district, and she's ready to provide Emma with the consistency and security Mr. Bliss cannot. The security of a mother who abandoned her daughter when she was 4 years old. Maxwell couldn't keep the anger from his voice. The consistency of a woman who didn't call Emma on her birthday last year, who sends generic gifts purchased by her assistant. Mr. Bliss, the judge warned, control yourself. I apologize, Your Honor, but I need you to understand. Yes, I've struggled financially. Yes, the shop has been in trouble. But I have never once made Emma feel like she was anything less than my entire world. I've been at every school event, every doctor's appointment, every nightmare at 2 a.m. And the work I've been doing for Miss Thornwood? It's going to save my business and provide Emma with the stability everyone claims to want for her. How convenient, Diane's attorney said. A mysterious windfall right before the custody hearing. The courtroom doors opened. Every head turned. Clarissa walked in, wearing a slate gray suit that probably cost 5 figures, carrying a leather portfolio. Behind her came Marcus, looking intimidating in a dark suit that barely contained his military bearing. Your Honor, Clarissa said, her CEO voice filling the room with authority. I apologize for the interruption, but I have information relevant to this case. The judge frowned. And you are? Clarissa Thornwood, CEO of Thornwood Industries. I'm the client Mr. Bliss has been working for. She moved to stand beside Maxwell, placing the portfolio on the table. I'm also the person who's been privileged to witness his dedication to his daughter over the past 3 weeks. Miss Thornwood, this is highly irregular. So is attempting to manipulate custody proceedings through deliberate misrepresentation. Clarissa opened the portfolio, removing several documents. I have here signed affidavits from my household staff, people who have observed Mr. Bliss bring Emma to my estate exactly 7 times. Each time, Emma was engaged in age-appropriate activities, reading in the library, playing in the gardens, helping cook with my chef, and spending time with me discussing art and books. She pulled out more papers. I also have financial documentation showing that Mr. Bliss has just completed a specialized automotive restoration project for me. His payment, $2 million, was deposited into his business account this morning. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Diane's face went white. Brad's perfect smile faltered. Furthermore, Clarissa continued, her voice cutting through the noise, I've taken the liberty of investigating Mrs. Hoffman's claims of providing a stable home. Mr. Bradley Hoffman is currently under investigation by the SEC for securities fraud. His company is facing bankruptcy proceedings, and his assets are likely to be seized within 60 days. Brad shot to his feet. That's confidential information. How did you? I have excellent lawyers, Clarissa said coolly. And when someone attacks a man I care about using lies and manipulation, I respond accordingly. The judge banged her gavel. Order. Miss Thornwood, while I appreciate your enthusiasm, this is still a court of law. Of course, Your Honor. I have one more document. Clarissa placed a final paper on the judge's bench. This is a character reference for Maxwell Bliss, co-signed by myself, my head of security Marcus Shaw, a decorated Marine veteran, and 15 employees of Thornwood Industries who have interacted with Mr. Bliss and his daughter over the past weeks. She turned to face Diane directly. Your daughter doesn't need a bigger house or a wealthier stepfather. She needs what she already has, a father who would sacrifice everything for her happiness. I've watched Maxwell choose Emma over his own interests repeatedly. He nearly walked away from our project because he thought it was taking too much time from her. He brings her to work not because he's negligent, but because he refuses to leave her with strangers. Clarissa's voice softened. Emma told me her father is her hero. She said he fixes broken things and makes them beautiful again. After spending 3 weeks watching him work, I understand what she means. He doesn't just fix cars, he fixes people's faith in themselves. He certainly fixed mine. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. The judge studied the documents, then looked at Diane. Mrs. Hoffman, is it true that you missed your daughter's birthday last year? Diane's attorney whispered frantically in her ear. She nodded reluctantly. And is it true that you've seen Emma exactly 4 times in the past 12 months? Another nod. The judge removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've seen every manipulation, every play for sympathy, every attempt to weaponize children in divorce proceedings. She looked at Maxwell. Mr. Bliss, your financial struggles concern me, but your dedication to your daughter is evident in every document I've reviewed. She turned to Diane. Mrs. Hoffman, I'm denying your petition for full custody. Moreover, I'm reducing your visitation to supervised visits until you can demonstrate consistent engagement with your daughter. You don't get to abandon a child for 3 years and then swoop in when your ex-husband finally achieves success. Diane burst into tears, the performative kind that had once made Maxwell question himself but now just made him tired. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Outside the courtroom, Emma flew into Maxwell's arms. Daddy, Mrs. Patterson said you won. We won, sweetheart. He held her tight, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. We won. Clarissa stood a few feet away, giving them space. When Emma spotted her, she wiggled out of Maxwell's arms and ran to hug Clarissa's legs. Thank you for helping my daddy, Emma said, looking up with tear-filled eyes. Clarissa crouched down, her own eyes suspiciously bright. Thank you for sharing him with me. They had 24 hours to install the engine, test it, and start the car to meet the inheritance deadline. Maxwell had barely slept in 3 days. The engine installation was technically complex. The 1965 Bentley S3 used systems that were obsolete by modern standards, and everything had to be done exactly right. One misaligned component, one crossed wire, one improperly torqued bolt could mean failure. Clarissa refused to leave the garage. She'd brought in food, coffee, and an endless supply of encouragement. Marcus assisted with the heavy lifting. Even Emma was there, sitting on her crate with Mr. Trunk, coloring pictures of the car for good luck. At 2 a.m., with 18 hours until the deadline, Maxwell connected the final fuel line. That's it, he said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. Everything's installed. Now we need to prime the fuel system, check for leaks, and then... Start it, Clarissa whispered. They spent the next 6 hours testing every system, checking every connection. Maxwell followed Commander Thornwood's final instruction, priming the fuel system twice instead of once. The bypass valve was indeed temperamental. It took him 3 attempts to get it properly seated. By 8 a.m., they were ready. The probate attorney had arrived, along with witnesses, a notary, and a video crew to document the attempt. The garage was crowded with people who'd come to see if Clarissa would succeed or fail. Gregory Ashford stood near the door, his face carefully neutral. Maxwell had learned from Clarissa that Ashford had been betting on her failure, planning to swoop in and acquire Thornwood Industries at a discount. The evidence Marcus had gathered of Ashford's sabotage was now in the hands of federal prosecutors. Whenever you're ready, Miss Thornwood, the probate attorney said. Clarissa looked at Maxwell, her grey-blue eyes filled with emotion. Together. Together, he confirmed. They sat in the Bentley, Clarissa in the driver's seat, Maxwell in the passenger seat, Emma in the back. Marcus stood by the hood, ready to listen for any problems. The crowd held its collective breath. Clarissa's hand trembled as she reached for the key. Maxwell covered her hand with his. Your father believed in you, he said softly. I believe in you. Now believe in yourself. She turned the key. For a moment, nothing happened. The engine turned over once, twice. Then it caught with a thunderous roar that echoed through the garage like the voice of God. The Bentley's engine purred to life, all 6 cylinders firing in perfect harmony, the sound of British engineering excellence filling the space with music. Clarissa burst into tears, laughing and crying simultaneously. Emma cheered from the back seat. Marcus pumped his fist in the air. The crowd erupted in applause. The probate attorney made notes on official documents. The condition has been met. Miss Thornwood, your full inheritance is released, effective immediately. Congratulations. Clarissa turned to Maxwell, and without thinking, without calculating, without any of her usual careful control, she kissed him. It was a kiss of joy, relief, gratitude, and something deeper, something that had been growing over 3 weeks of searching, fighting, and rebuilding together. When they finally pulled apart, Emma was giggling. Does this mean Miss Rissa is going to be my new mommy? The adults froze, suddenly aware that the entire garage was watching them. Clarissa looked at Maxwell, and he saw all the vulnerability she usually hid. I realize this is crazy, she said quietly. We've known each other 3 weeks. You're a mechanic, I'm a CEO. We live in different worlds. This shouldn't work. But, Maxwell prompted, but I've never felt more myself than when I'm with you. You see past the armor. You challenge me without diminishing me. You make me want to be softer without being weaker. She took a shaky breath. My father's letter said I had to marry for love within 5 years. I thought I'd never find someone who could handle my complicated life. Then you showed up in your grease-stained coveralls and saw me, really saw me, from day one. Maxwell cupped her face in his hands, his calloused thumbs wiping away her tears. I'm not going to propose in front of a crowd with a probate attorney timing it for inheritance purposes. Her face fell. Oh, I understand. I'm going to do it properly. Take you on an actual date, one where we are not covered in engine grease and exhausted. Get to know each other outside of impossible mechanical challenges. Let Emma get used to the idea gradually. Court you like you deserve. How long will that take? At least 3 dates. Maybe 4. He grinned. I'm old-fashioned that way. I don't have 3 dates worth of patience, Clarissa said, kissing him again. Not after waiting 31 years to feel this way. Then I guess we'll have to schedule them quickly. Gregory Ashford pushed through the crowd, his composure cracking. This isn't over, Clarissa. The merger still needs board approval. You think your little victory here changes anything? Marcus stepped into his path. Mr. Ashford, you should leave before I personally escort you off the property. And before you make threats, you should know that federal prosecutors are very interested in your communication with Prestige Auto Shipping. Ashford's face went pale. He backed toward the door, then practically ran. The crowd began to disperse, leaving Maxwell, Clarissa, Emma, and Marcus in the garage with the still-running Bentley. We should take it for a drive, Emma suggested. Miss Rissa promised I could ride in it. Clarissa laughed, a real laugh, free and genuine. You're absolutely right. I did promise. They drove through the estate's grounds as the morning sun climbed higher, Emma squealing with delight in the backseat, Maxwell navigating, and Clarissa behind the wheel of her father's beloved car, finally understanding what he tried to teach her all along. Some things can't be bought or delegated. Some victories require getting your hands dirty. And the most valuable treasures are the connections you forge when you stop trying to control everything and let yourself be vulnerable enough to love. 6 months later. The wedding was small, just 50 people in the garden at the Thornwood estate. Emma served as flower girl, wearing a dress she'd helped design. Marcus walked Clarissa down the aisle, having become the protective older brother she'd never had. Maxwell stood at the altar in a custom suit that Clarissa had insisted on buying, though he'd drawn the line at designer shoes. A man's got to have some principles, he joked. When Clarissa appeared, she took his breath away. Not because of the elegant designer gown or professional makeup, but because she was glowing with genuine happiness. They dated properly, just as Maxwell insisted. 4 dates that turned into dozens. Dinners where they talked until restaurants closed. Movies in the estate's private theater with Emma between them. Working side by side in Maxwell's shop, which Clarissa had quietly invested in, expanding it into a specialty restoration garage that attracted clients from across the country. The merger with Ashford Technologies had been restructured. Ashford himself was facing federal charges, and his company had been acquired by Thornwood Industries at Clarissa's terms. 3,000 jobs were saved. The company was thriving. More importantly, Clarissa was thriving. She'd promoted new leadership, delegated more, and learned to leave the office at reasonable hours. She'd had the heart surgery, with Maxwell holding her hand through every terrifying moment. She was healthier, happier, and, as Marcus frequently observed, actually bearable to be around. Maxwell had kept his shop but now specialized in impossible restorations. His reputation had exploded after word spread about the Thornwood Bentley. He had a waiting list of clients and had hired 3 additional mechanics. Money was no longer a constant worry. But the best change was Emma. She had a mother figure who actually wanted to be there, who attended school events, who helped with homework, who tucked her in at night with stories about adventure and courage. As Maxwell and Clarissa exchanged vows, Emma held Mr. Trunk and whispered to the stuffed elephant, "See, I told you Daddy could fix anything." After the ceremony, they drove away in the Bentley, white ribbons streaming from the chrome, the engine purring like a contented cat. Emma waved from the backseat as they headed toward a honeymoon destination Clarissa had kept secret. "Where are we going?" Maxwell asked. "You'll see," Clarissa said, her hand in his. They drove for 2 hours, finally pulling up to a small cottage by the ocean. It was simple, rustic, the opposite of the Thornwood Estate's grandeur. "I bought it last month," Clarissa explained as they walked inside. "I thought we needed a place that was just ours. No corporate pressure, no estate maintenance, no staff. Just us." The cottage had 3 bedrooms, a workshop out back for Maxwell, and a study overlooking the ocean for Clarissa. It was perfect. That night, after Emma was asleep, they sat on the beach watching the waves. "Do you ever regret it?" Clarissa asked. "Your life was simpler before I drove into your garage making absurd demands." Maxwell pulled her closer. "My life was smaller. There's a difference. I still can't believe you solved my father's puzzle." "We solved it together. That was the whole point." He kissed her temple. "Besides, I got something better than $2 million. "What's that?" "A family. A second chance. A reason to believe that broken things can be made beautiful again." He paused, though the $2 million was also nice. She laughed and hit him playfully. "Materialist," says the billionaire. "Former billionaire. I'm sharing now." "Yes, you are. And you're doing great." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the waves. Maxwell thought about the journey that had brought them here, the impossible car, the missing engine, the desperate bargain that had changed everything. "Moksh." Clarissa's voice was soft in the darkness. "Yeah." "Thank you." "For what?" "For fixing my father's car. For finding the engine. For showing me that vulnerability isn't weakness. For loving Emma like she's your whole world. For loving me even when I didn't know how to love myself."